Hi, everyone. Today I'm going to read chapter 10 from Hero for you. I'm going to try to expand my screen, see if it works this time. Chapter 10. Ben, Hero, and Scout headed out to the parking lot. It had taken Hero and Ben away from the Scout pallet. The puppy finally moved Hero's leash around the bike rack while he unclipped Scout's leash. He started to tuck Scout into the carrier strapped to the back of his bike. Just then, the engine of a police cruiser started up a few feet away. The car pulled out into the street, and the sound of its siren cut through the air like an explosion. Ben's eardrums vibrated. Hero didn't even flinch. He sat calmly next to Ben, but Scout's whole body stiffened. Before Ben had time to react, the puppy had jumped out of the carrier, landed on the asphalt, and taken off. Scout moved so fast across the parking lot and toward the road that he was a blur. Hero, who was held back by his leash, barked frantically after Scout. Scout, stop! Ben yelled. Scout, stay! In the blink of an eye, Scout turned onto the sidewalk outside the station and was gone. Hero, go! Ben cried out, unclipping Hero's leash from his harness. You're going to have to figure out where he went, okay? He said. Hero, find Scout. Hero skimmed his nose across the sidewalk, his head moving rapidly back and forth as he followed Scout's scent. He looked up for a second, turned back to Ben, then took off running down the street. Ben pedaled as fast as he could to keep up. Hero was in full tracking mode. His body moved in a perfect, beautiful stride, like an elegant machine. Ben wasn't familiar with the area around the police station. Hero zigzagged through the neighborhood and led Ben to the beachside road that ran for miles along the Gulf of Mexico. Ben hardly noticed the endless stretch of white sand beaches. Hero and Ben turned inland and headed down the quiet residential streets, where porches wrapped around old mansions, and quite a few houses had tall columns out front. They skirted the airport and trudged along the sludgy banks of a bayou. Soon they were miles away. Ben began to doubt Hero. Surely Scout couldn't have run this far. Finally, as the sky was starting to dim to a dull gray, Hero slowed his pace. They were on the outskirts of town, in a neighborhood Ben had never been to before. It was a desolate stretch, not quite residential, not quite rural. There were Mr. Northrop is sneezing in the background. There were big patches of land between the houses, some with overgrown grass and tall weeds. No one was out walking. There were no kids playing in front yards. It was quiet and isolated. Ben couldn't picture sweet, innocent Scout in a creepy neighborhood like this. It made him feel queasy just thinking about it. They turned a corner and Hero started barking and picking up speed again. He bolted toward the last house on the block, sat down in the driveway, and waited for Ben to catch up. Huffing and puffing, Ben pulled up next to Hero and gave the dog a treat. He caught his breath and looked over the house. It was newish and simple, nothing fancy. One story, red brick with a driveway running up the side. When Ben saw what was parked in that driveway, a weird feeling washed over him. It was a black SUV. For a split second, Ben couldn't place the car or put his finger on why it was making the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Then suddenly, it clicked. It was the same truck he'd seen driving slowly by his house last week when he was on the lawn with Noah. He recognized the dented bumper. A brown and white ball of movement barreled down the driveway and jumped up on Ben's legs. Scout! The puppy barked and wagged his tail so hard it almost spun his tiny body in circles. Ben was flooded with relief. He leaned over to pick up the puppy, and Scout wiggled in his arms and licked his face. I'm happy to see you too, Scout. You scared the heck out of me. Ben looked down at Hero. Nice work, Hero. Hero just panted in response. He didn't need thanks. He'd done exactly what he was trained to do. Now, while I'm reading, I'm thinking, oh no, this isn't good. I am sure that Ben should not be where he is right now, and I feel like he's going to get in trouble. Maybe you have some of those feelings too. That's because there's been some foreshadowing in the book, some clues about what you think might happen. So I want you to be thinking about that because that's what good readers do as they read is they think about the clues from before and try to make predictions about what's going to come up next. At the sound of a door slamming shut, Ben looked up at the house. A tall, thin man was making his way down the driveway. Every muscle in Hero's body tensed as his protective instincts kicked in. Scout trembled in Ben's arms and burrowed himself into Ben's sweatshirt. As the man got closer, Ben realized he'd seen him before. It was the same guy he'd talked to at the car lot, the one who had complimented his dogs. The man stopped a few feet away. Do you have a sense of foreboding right now, like something bad is going to happen? I know you, kid, the man said. Ben nodded but didn't respond. The man looked Hero up and down and then locked his gaze on the puppy. Scout, right? His tone was different today. He didn't sound as friendly as he had before. Yeah, Scout, Ben said. This guy gave him the creeps. Uh, thanks, sir. We just came to get the puppy. We'll get off your property now. The man let out a hoarse laugh. No, sir. You can call me Mitch. The man's mouth moved into something resembling a smile. What's the rush? Ben didn't like the look in Mitch's eye. It was cold, like his mouth and his eyes were feeling two totally different things. You ever think of fighting these dogs? Mitch asked, the fake smile still on his face. Fighting them? What do you mean? Ben stopped mid sentence. Dog fighting. Ben shuddered. No, sir. No way. Hero's a police dog, and Scout here, he's just a puppy. The man nodded, but said nothing. His eyes flashed up to Ben's face. Ben held his gaze for as long as he could, finally looking away. We're gonna go, Ben said firmly. Hero, come. Hero hopped up and stood by Ben's side as he got on his bike. Without a word, Mitch turned and headed back into his house, slamming the screen door behind him. Ben exhaled and hustled the dogs away from the house as fast as he could. As he biked home, Ben's mind raced, trying to process the long chase and the weird dude at the house. Mitch. Everything about that guy made Ben feel uneasy. The things he said, the way he looked at Hero and Scout, the way he acted like Ben hardly even existed. By the time he pedaled up his driveway, Ben was exhausted, and he could see that Hero and Scout were wiped out from the long day, too. Ben gave them extra water and food and put Scout into his crate, making sure that the latch was secure. Hero stayed downstairs, curled up on the floor next to Scout's crate. The two dogs, one big and one little, pressed against each other, separated only by the thin metal. Just the sight of his dogs flooded Ben with a deep sense of appreciation and love. Hero had really come through for them that day, tracking Scout so far away, and Scout had seemed so relieved when they finally found him. Scout was already sound asleep. Hero looked around the room, inspecting it one last time before going to sleep. He spotted Ben watching him. Good night, buddy, Ben said from the stairs. Hero exhaled sharply through his nose, almost like a sigh, and shut his eyes. I wonder what you're thinking now. Like what sort of questions you might have. I know I have questions and I have predictions. Because remember, I've never read this book before either. So maybe you want to email me a question you might have or a prediction you might have. I'd love to hear from you. Well, you guys, that was chapter 10, and we look forward to chapter 11. Have a great rest of the day.